We are here. I'm Steve Peralt. That is Joey Capone. It is episode 164 of ITM. And this is one of the saddest days in Red Sox history, Joe. This is I still can't believe we lost Wake. I still can't believe how fast this all happened. It's still very fresh. Season ended today, and that couldn't have felt more useless considering the news that we got right before the game started. And I'm devastated. A lot of Red Sox fans were all devastated. I feel so terribly for his teammates. I feel terribly, obviously, for his family, his friends, the Nesson family. It's brutal. It's brutal, Joe. This one was the ultimate gut punch. This one really, really, really stings.
Yeah.
And it's gonna for a while.
And knowing a few days prior didn't change anything because I think the last thing anybody expected when the news leaked was that, a couple days later there would be a memorial post. It didn't prepare me at all, or I don't think anybody. Just the suddenness of it, especially because he was around. I think that's the biggest thing.
I know
that he was present and active in doing stuff. And I think we associate things like cancer with somebody being, debilitated and somebody going through treatment, and you can physically see it on them. And Wake just had none of that. He was just still in the booth, still in the post game, still being Wake. Had the news not broke the other day, I would have had zero idea. I mean, I think that's how we all felt, right? On the 28th when the story came out, I don't think any of us had a semblance of a clue that anything was going on, which obviously, as we found out, was intentional because they wanted to stay private. But goddamn, did he do a good job keeping it private, man. I just had zero clue.
The thing that I found out today is that he didn't know, I think, until a few weeks ago. Like, from the sound of it,
God,
I don't think he knew until a few weeks ago. And goes in, wasn't feeling great, gets that news, and it just went downhill so fast. And let's just get the Schilling. Let's get the Schilling part out of the way. I know a lot of people are going to destroy Schilling, and rightfully so. I was very glad today that the vast, vast, vast majority of the discussion was how great a person Wake was, the career he
100%.
had on and off the field, that it really stayed on that. Because obviously what Schilling did was miserable, unforgivable, but I'm glad the focus has remained on Wake and has remained on how much he mattered to Red Sox fans, to this community, to everybody that he played with. You would never find anyone that would say a negative thing about Tim Wakefield, ever.
No,
and
zero.
It's a guy that he just never thought you'd. It's just Joey. I'm stunned. I know
it.
That this happened. Like I can't wrap my head around the fact that Wake is gone. Tim Wakefield's gone. Like typically, and not to Johnny, but like when a Red Sox alumni passes away, it's someone that lived a full life, that was part of the '67 team.
It's somebody you got to ask your dad, like, what was it like watching them?
It was like, oh, Steven, this guy was. I remember seeing him at the park. I remember, the run they made, and I remember this great catch he made and all that. Yeah. It's not a guy from the 2004 and 2007 World Series Red Sox. Like, no, it's absurd.
A guy who was pitching when I was in high school. Yeah.
Yeah.
Younger than both of our dads by a bit.
Yeah.
So, it's terrifying stuff, how quick it happens. And it also just kind of always feels like it's these kind of people, doesn't it? It always just feels like it's the
gems,
least deserving folks. Yeah. It makes it, on a serious note here, I mean, obviously this is all serious, but not to get all too heavy here, but it does kind of make you double question just the whole idea of karma and all that. When somebody who led such a great life and somebody who gave back so much, 8 Roberto Clemente Award nominations. 8.
That's crazy.
Insane. A guy like that just gets, their life ripped away from them at the drop of a hat. It's hard to come to terms with, because I think we all have a sense of right and wrong and justice, and good things happen to good people, and if you do the right things, the universe kind of rewards you, and things like that just kind of make you think that maybe all that's just not true, and the world's just random, and things just happen. And I think that's really, really scary to people, that the world can just be random and terrible things just happen. And it does always just kind of feel like it happens to the best folks. And Wake was among them. I think there's just going to be an endless slew of great stories about what an awesome guy he was. And it was nice. It was also a little overwhelming to go through Twitter today, because every time we refreshed, there was just a couple new videos, a couple new stories, and I'd read them, I'd smile, and I'd start crying, and be like, you know what? Got to walk away for a minute, come back, a couple new stories, a couple great little anecdotes that I'd never heard before, then got to walk away again. It was nice. We got to spend kind of the whole day hearing more and more of these, like, hey, I've never told anyone the story, but one time Wake, visited me at the aquarium, and he told me all about turtles or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I am so glad the season is over. I am so glad that I'm saying that from the standing of, obviously you never want to get this news, but the fact that Red Sox fans, former teammates, everybody has to deal with this devastating news, the focus can be on honoring Wake. We don't have to put some stupid lineup out. Imagine how useless that would feel if we had another week left in the season, and it's like, we got Rafael. That would just be the biggest, it'd be the dumbest thing ever if you'd have to focus on these useless games.
We would have to have a conversation about whether or not we wanted to do shows on those.
Oh, we just wouldn't. I mean, this entire show is about Tim Wakefield. This is going to have nothing to do with any of the games that just happened, any of the recap stuff. No, that can wait. But there is a beauty to the fact that it's all Wake now. It's going to be him getting honored all week, month, off season, heading into what obviously will be a ceremony on opening day at Fenway Park. And while it is truly, truly terrible what happened, Joey, you're right. You get to hear these stories, stuff that maybe would have stayed personal, and not, these even just the funny stuff, right? Even the stuff that's a little lighter. It's like, oh, I was out on the course with Wake and this, like, it's nice to hear that stuff, because we're all sad. Like, we're all trying to deal with the loss of a guy that felt like he was kind of a distant he's like a family member. He's like a party. Oh yeah. As a Red Sox fan, I got a Wake. I got this guy that not only was he a huge part of being a fan growing up, it's like, oh, you guys might have the guy that throws 100. We got the knuckleball guy. Like, good luck hitting this guy. It was cool having a Tim Wakefield on your team, because it was very rare. And that's just being a kid rooting for the player. When you then got to find out who he was as a person, which I think, and not to, probably shouldn't even mention this, but like, sometimes when we lose people too soon, people feel obligated to talk about how nice a person they were. It's so easy for people to say that about Tim Wakefield, because it's genuine. It's not made up. It's not fabricated. This guy was as good a person, as genuine a person as you could have. And in the brief interactions we had, we did the first podcast he ever did with Section 10. That was the first time he had done one. He had no idea what was going on. He was like, yeah, absolutely, I'll do it. And, it was right before the playoff run in 2018. He couldn't have been better about it. And, anytime I saw him at the park, he'd say, what's up? How you doing? And it's the little stuff like that matters so much. I felt so excited that Tim Wakefield knew who I was. Steve, it was like, that's nuts.
Steve, I was going to bring this up later in the show, but this beyond relevant to what you're talking about. I have to bring it up right now. I think it was opening day last year, Fenway opening day last year, I believe. We were out by the 502 deck and whatever, and we're walking out there, and we're walking, and we heard Steve, and turned around, and it was Tim Wakefield. And he shook his hand, said, hey, whatever, and I introduced myself, and whatever, he walked away, and you looked at me, you were like, Tim Wakefield knows my name. And I was like, he knows mine now. And I texted my dad. I was like, Tim Wakefield knows who I am. How crazy is that? I just told him my name, and I said, hey, I'll see you around. And there was like a real pride in just interacting with him, because he felt like such an important character in our lives for so long. And he is, I think, really the only example of somebody who was a Red Sox mainstay for that long, because it just felt like he'd be around forever. And it was 1997 until now. I mean, was there even a gap? I felt like he just like went right into broadcasting.
I think it was like 2012. He retires after the 2011 season. And I believe in 2012 he was doing NESN. So it's like you didn't even have the gap. You didn't even have his first year in Boston was 95. So
95,
from 95
Steve,
to
that's
2020,
I was born in 1995.
Your entire life.
My entire
life. But this is what I'm alluding to with, like, if you're a Red Sox fan under the age of 30, Tim Wakefield has just been a part of this your entire existence. This guy has been here. He's either been pitching for the team, doing NESN pre and post at Fenway. Again, he was a part of the experience. He was just like, right, we have a Tim Wakefield. This guy's always going to be here. And when the news broke, and we were talking before recording of how we found out, and it's that gut punch always sticks with you. And I'm like, I just hate knowing that I'm not going to like forget that. Like those always hurt a ton. I immediately thought of TC. And I put the pregame on, and Joey, I don't know. I have so much respect for what the folks at NESN did today. I don't know how they just did an entire pregame after the news dropped during the pregame show. This news comes out during the pregame show, and they just have to go.
I didn't even realize that.
Well, they just had to, like, on the fly be like, all right, I guess, and they lost their friend. Like, your friend passes away during this show, a show that he's been on 1,000 times, and you have to discuss that and keep it moving into a game. And then they go to Dave and Uke is tearing up talking about. I start crying watching. If you weren't crying watching that, you don't have a heart.
I don't understand how Uke did that.
I don't know.
Game. I would have up and left and gone home. That's
and Dave's like
props to Dave.
Dave's obviously a professional and has been in this game for a long time. And even his voice was wavering a little bit. I'm like, you're getting Dave O'Brien. Like you really, meant something. And obviously these guys work with them. I felt so bad for everybody at NESN today. I felt so terribly bad that they had to do this show. Oh God.
And the most useless game too. I mean, like on top of that too, it's like this was already. There's a million different ways to look at it, but the way that I looked at it was, you probably show up thinking like, oh, God, got to get through this. Whatever, who cares? I got to put on the suit one last time. Whatever, I'll give some hugs, say goodbye to some people, and then I can't wait to go on vacation, go here, go there, or whatever, or at least stop watching the Red Sox. And it's a pretty vulnerable place to be in, that you're relinquished and your heart's out of it and you kind of have your guard down. It's really maybe the worst possible situation to be in, to get punched directly in the chest with this kind of news. So, I mean, I was thinking the same thing, man, and seeing the tweets rolling in from TC, from Pellerin, Jemai, Orsillo.
Orsillos were tough, man. Those were tough.
They were real tough. The videos of him, I mean, that NESN promo of him and Wake, that must have been 20.
It was probably 20 years ago, yeah. 02, something like that. I mean, Orsillo was one of the first people I thought of. Obviously, like I mentioned, Tom Caron. Everybody he worked with at NESN. It's just a devastating loss. And even seeing Jim Rice was emotional talking about it. I mean, these guys played golf all the time. Dude. And it's he just mattered a ton. He mattered a ton around here. And it sucks when, as a fan, and then we get into kind of the media side of things, even though this is like the fun media side of things. It's really cool when we get to then meet these guys and feel like you can just kind of know who they are as people a little bit, instead of just, that was the guy every fifth day that threw the knuckleball. It's like, no, you got to know Wake a little bit off the field. Now, I'm not going to act like I was around Wake all the time. I mean, we interviewed him in 18, exchange hellos, how you doings at Fenway here and there. But it just stings so much when you never factor in you were even decades from losing this guy. Like that's no. Never for a second was I going to think this was even, or any of us was going to think this was even remotely close to a possibility. So then when you see and obviously it does suck that you first hear from Schilling, but like when you see that tweet, it's just, oh my God, that is just as bad as it gets.
You
As
know
bad as
who
it gets.
you know who hit me the hardest just in terms of seeing them emotional? Because there's certain folks, I think you and I can relate to this because we got old school pops.
Mm,
Like when you see pops get choked up, you're like, oh man, this
yeah.
is the real deal. Because those are few and far between. I felt like I had a moment where I saw dad cry today, and that was seeing Tech get emotional. That
Oh
was,
my God.
I mean, dude, he's sniffling. I'm like, bro, you better knock that off right now. There's like I'm not I'm not gonna be able to hold it together for a second more of this. That was tough,
It's
especially
fun. It's
because
funny too.
Cora, yeah.
Oh, just real quick on Veritek. It's funny that I always think of Veritek and Wake together. You always feel like they're a combo deal, and they kind of retire together. They go off into
Mhm,
the sunset together. They're still around Fenway together all the time, and
mhm.
yet he wasn't even his catcher. Like
I know, how crazy, huh?
Mirabelli was the guy. I feel for Mirabelli today. It's a brutal
Mhm.
day for Doug Mirabelli. So it's,
I
but
saw a
yet
couple
those
clips
those
of,
guys,
like, the few instances Tech did catch for him.
yeah.
Great montage because it's just
Oh,
Tech getting hit in the chest and bouncing him off
dude,
the knee.
game
It's
5
great.
of the ALCS. I don't think I've ever been that nervous in my life than Veritek throwing, or rather, obviously Wakefield throwing the ball and Veritek having no clue where it's going. And it was pass ball after like almost wild pitch. I'm like, I am not gonna survive watching this. Like, I can't.
Yeah.
We can't make it, dude. And they get out of the inning. They win that game. They go on to win the ALCS and the World
Mhm,
Series. Obviously, just a year removed from the Aaron Boone homer. There's another
mhm.
element to Wakefield where you got to be like, tell me if you think this too.
I know
When
exactly
I
where you're going, yeah.
when I think of Tim Wakefield,
Mhm,
I don't ever think of the Boone homer. Like that's never what comes to mind. It's like this guy that mattered to us so much that's still a part of our lives with the broadcast and everything. And then it's like, oh yeah, he gave up the Boone homer. You know how good you have to be as a person and how much you've had to matter to the team for everyone to love you, even though that the Boone homer happened in '03. Like,
in Boston,
yeah, he overcame
while the
that.
curse well, the curse was still intact. 0 people upset at Tim Wakefield for that. I mean,
Everyone was
I was a
devastated.
young
Everyone felt
chap.
terrible. I was
Yeah,
crying, just like, oh my God, and not Wakefield, not our guy. He's been here. He had been
yeah.
there the whole time. He was there on some crap teams. And
It was
he
never
was
like, "Oh, screw you, Wake. I can't believe you gave it up. What are you
felt
doing out
terrible.
there?" It was like,
It
"Oh,
was
man,
you look at Wakefield like
not
you look at
him."
Trot Nixon, like you look at these other guys that left it all out there, that gave it their all, that weren't the most God-gifted, talented players, but you
Mhm,
still love them because they felt like they were from here. That was the thing with Wakefield. It was like a
mhm.
local guy was pitching for the team. It's like your dad was pitching for the team. He was like, what was his last? He was 44 in
Yeah,
2011
yeah,
and he won 7 games at the age of 44 for the 2011 Red Sox. It
yeah.
felt like this is so cool. This guy that really, without that pitch, obviously wouldn't be out there, but he has perfected this nearly unhittable pitch. And you get to keep playing because of it, because it's not messing your arm up. You're not throwing 100 miles an hour
Right.
a million times every fifth day.
Yeah.
So you get to pitch into your mid 40s. So, Joey, that also played into his transition to the booth, where it's like, it's such an easy move over to the broadcast booth because you're the perfect age to do pre and post game now. You're in your mid 40s going on to
Right, right,
50,
right.
and it's like, there you go. It's not like you're some 33, 34-year-old that's career gets kind of cut a little short, and it's like, hey, I'm not ready. He was fully ready to transition to the booth, and he did a great job at it. It's,
Yeah.
yeah,
Crazy
I
that
mean,
that
it's,
pitch
yeah,
also kinda gave him his career because he came up as a first baseman.
I know.
He was
Playing
he
short, too. I feel like he was playing some shortstop. I mean, he was not a pitcher.
No, and just found this thing that got him to the promised land. Um, one of the other things I wanted to mention on here, I don't even know how much of this you remember, but last year, in the off season, we were talking about content that we wanted to make this upcoming year, and
Mm.
one of the things I suggested to you was like, "Hey, do you think, we could get Wake to throw us a knuckleball and, like, do, like, a little competition where we, like, try to catch, Wake's knuckleball?" And there was never an issue in my head of like, can he still throw it? In my head, I'm like, of course, like that's not the question. The question is, can we borrow him for long enough to do that? Would he be willing to do it on camera and all that stuff? And you reminded me of Game 5 of the ALCS where you're like, dude, Tech had a tough time catching him. You think you and I are going to get in there and just like, I know that you think like, oh, it doesn't look that hard. Why can't they, when you watch these super slow-mo versions of what's going on, but like,
it's
not
impossible.
how it is in real time.
No, Jason Varitek has caught 4 no-hitters, but he could not catch Tim Wakefield's knuckleball. It's props to Mirabelli. I don't even know how you like prep for it. You're like, all right, let's just try to go with this thing, not knowing where it's going to go. I don't know how you go up and be like, yeah, I'm going to be great at catching a knuckleball. I just don't understand that.
No, crazy. But that's got to be a very special kind of relationship. Like you talked about how Mirabelli must be. I don't even know if he has social or anything.
He probably doesn't have socials. Doesn't he seem like a guy that would not be online? Doug Mirabelli.
He'd be a guy that you find out like he lives in Montana. What is he doing?
Yeah, he's got Montana. He's got Montana.
Yeah, it'd be like, you just find out that he popped up somewhere on the other side of the country.
Yeah. I would assume. I was talking with my aunt Denise, who's a huge. I mean, it was my dad's birthday, so yeah, I'm back in Hingham and spending the B day with him, and we were just talking Wake and Sox. And I mentioned with my aunt Denise, we were thinking they're definitely going to wear a patch next year, right? You think they'd have the 49 patch next year? Do you think that's like I don't know. Maybe. Who knows?
I don't know.
It also might be tricky because now it's the off season and you go into it and you have 6 months until the season starts up again. I feel terrible for whoever has to make the decision on like patches and like how to honor somebody, because that just seems like a nightmare to try to decipher who deserves it and who doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have the slightest idea of, I mean,
I think whatever the Sox do, they're going to handle it very well.
I think it's more likely that they retire 49 than they wear a patch for some reason. I don't know what that Goose agrees. I don't know what that distinction is in my head, but that one feels more relevant.
Well, the fact they retired 49? What's up?
Does anybody wear 49 right now? I feel like Pavetta's 47.
Let's see. Red Sox. Yeah, because they've held some numbers from being used since players retired, so there's a chance. 49. Tim Wakefield was the last Red Sox player to wear number 49,
and that was 12 years ago.
Yeah, it was 12 years ago. That's obviously by design.
Then I think then he will probably be the final person to ever wear it, if I had to guess.
Yeah,
because
it would feel right, and it's also not forcing it. This guy won 200 games with you. I think he's one of the most innings in Red Sox history. A huge member of not just Red Sox teams, but also then the broadcast for over a decade. Yeah. Not a single person would complain about Tim Wakefield getting his number retired.
28 years with the organization in one capacity or another. From,
I mean, that's
from
absurd.
1995.
3 decades. Yeah, it's it's insane.
And is a Red Sox Hall of Famer. He has all the makings of a retired number. I think that's the move, is they retire 49 and
and then on opening day would be the move. I think that would be the move, and have all his teammates there, the guys that really meant something to him, won World Series with him, were there for the ride. Today is obviously a very sad day, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm excited to hear every single Tim Wakefield story that comes out this week. Like this week, next week, the week after that. I can't wait to hear every single Wake story that teammates have to share, to try to make us feel a little better. Because, like I mentioned earlier, it's something you just don't fathom is even within the realm of possibility. And so when something that seems truly impossible happens, that's this devastating, it's very hard to handle it. Like Joey, I don't know the last time I've cried this much in a day. I've been like tearing up all day. This has been so difficult to try to comprehend.
I honestly was wondering if you were in the same boat that I was, because I don't know how you and I sync up in that way. Because very rarely, I think 0 times, have you and I experienced a loss of somebody in our lives, our lives, but you know what I mean, in our
Sox
circle,
family. In our Sox family. This is what this is. He's in the family.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I was, like I said, I had to keep walking away from my phone. I had to keep putting it down, because I mean, it's one of those, like you feel yourself getting real worked up. You're like, okay, all right, I just need to I got to take a lap. I got to get some water. I'm going to go to the store, get some Doritos.
Yeah.
And I went back to the same market 3 times today. I just kept going
So
back.
like this
And
guy,
I was like,
what's
it's
going
got to
on
go
with
for a
this
quick
guy?
little walk here because I'm getting too involved in these stories. But
The uke one was
nah,
the
yeah,
hardest. The uke one was the hardest because it was so fresh. It was so like it was right off the news, and just an authentic reaction by a guy that obviously was close with Wake and that played with him, that was in the booth with him, like, all of the above. And they're showing a pretty touching, like, photo, video montage of Wake on Nesson before the game starts. It's like, oh man, this is something about that made it real. Like, you knew it was real, but then seeing that and it's on the broadcast, it's like, oh God, this really happened.
I
Like,
think, I mean, if you want to get technical with it, the first stage is denial and whatever. As much
yeah,
as you are seeing all the posts and all that, there's a level of acceptance that you definitely don't have off the bat. You have to really see for yourself. You have to hear it. You have to whatever. I will say, I meant to mention this sooner than now, but I think the Baltimore Orioles production staff or whoever, whatever they call them over there, they deserve a shout out for sure
big time,
because
big
they
time.
are, yeah, because they were very well aware that the Red Sox are not going back to Fenway.
Yeah.
This is where this season ends, and they don't have an opportunity to honor Wake until next April. And they, rolled out the carpet for him, and they had a beautiful speech and a moment of silence, and it was a real moment of silence too. I hate the people who feel the need to woo
Oh my God.
during those.
Put them in the people that run on the field and cause a security guy to break his arm. Like, throw them in the same group of worst people ever.
Yeah, I
Awful.
mean, I'll I'll tell you, I'll wait till the moment of silence ends. I'll put my hot dog in your beer. I really will.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll
No,
throw away a
I've seen
$4
you
hot
do it.
dog. Yeah, I
I've seen
know
you do
you.
it.
I do it at literally every moment of silence
I
that you
know.
and I've ever
You
been
do it
at.
all the time, and I'm like, you should probably stop doing this. This is a weird tradition, but um, Joey. There's no playbook. Obviously, there's no playbook. Credit to the Red Sox, like the social teams as well. I think they did a really good job handling today. I don't think there's any playbook ever for these kind of things. Like the first one that comes to mind is Kobe, just because that was like recent and obviously a huge passing, and the Lakers were probably like, how the hell do you handle this? And of course, different types of calibers, but in terms of what they mattered to the team, like Wake is our guy. Like Wake, I know he started in Pittsburgh, but like no one remembers that. He is a Boston Red Sox player, a Boston Red Sox Nation member for his entire professional career and post career. And, you just don't know how to go about it. So for a team that is the Orioles that's trying to figure how are we going to handle this? There's no playbook for how you handle a road team's legend passing away that day.
My God,
There was
no,
no heads
yeah,
up, nothing. This was right before the game. It was like a half hour before the game started. So real credit to them, credit to the Orioles. And I genuinely, I know I've had my jabs at Nesson before. I can't give them enough respect for how they handled today. It was top to bottom, TC, Jim Rice, everybody, OB, Uke, all the people behind the scenes. That had to absolutely suck to have to put that broadcast on the pre and post, knowing not only did the game not mean anything, not only is this the last day of another disappointing season, so you're already kind of bummed, you're already gassed. It's 162. It's such a grind, but you lost a friend and a coworker, and you didn't really have much of a heads up that that was going to happen. Um, Infinite respect to those guys and gals, and I don't know how anyone is supposed to get through that without breaking down. Like that's crazy. And yeah, it's just a really sad day, Joey. It's a really sad day that like tomorrow waking up is going to be bizarre. Like, oh right, that actually like this whole stretch here is going to be brutal. Honestly, it's going to be brutal.
yeah.
And as much as I'm excited to hear players talk about the good stories and all that, it's going to be another gut punch to see them getting teared up over a guy that mattered a lot to them, mattered a lot to us. That's going to be a reminder that he's not here anymore. And it just doesn't feel right. And never to draw any kind of comparisons, but with Remy, there was a little more of a heads up, and it didn't make it easier, but it wasn't maybe as out of nowhere, out of left field.
Mm-hmm.
With
There's
this, it
something to be
is.
said. There's something to be said about that.
There's something to be said
It's
about that.
not easier. It's not whatever. There's no correct verbiage to say
Yeah,
around it, but it's worth
you know what I'm
mentioning because
saying, right?
they are totally different. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, totally different. And obviously have similar DNA in terms of, Red Sox fan favorite, with Nesson for a while, made an impact there, matter a lot in the community, all of that. But I mean, losing Remy, losing Wake, like, this is awful. This is,
It's
it's
tough.
just terrible. It's just
Back to
terrible.
back in back to back years like that too. I mean, it's just, and then not to make this about anything other than what we're talking, but I mean, just to look at the grand picture of how much the Red Sox family has changed over the past even 3-4 years. If you want to go that far, you're talking about a lot of folks, but not just players, everybody surrounding the team, how much that family has changed. We've lost a lot of folks, and this is obviously a real loss versus somebody being traded to the Dodgers.
But
It's a lot different.
Joey, let's also factor in here, and you're completely right that things are obviously on immensely different scales, but you feel similar levels of pain. A guy gets traded away that's part of the whole invite them into your house every night, even though I think it's like one of the most overused statements, is so true. I still get sad and feel pain over Don Orsillo not being here. He hasn't been here for 8 years, and it still kills me that you got to see him with the Padres, and it's a little different because they suck this year too. So it's not like they're having a bunch of fun either. But it's still, that's the guy. And seeing him post the clips with Wakefield, it's like, man, hate to do the whole good old days thing, but like, that's when you had the gang was all together, right? Like, everybody's here. The Sox were the it thing. They were buzzing. They won a title. They won another title. They messed around and won another one and then another one. And over that time, you saw some of your favorite players that were on your TV screens that you paid to go see at Fenway, that you allowed to be a part of your life and were thankful that they were a part of your life, go away. And it's really, really, really difficult to cope with that and to deal with it and to try to remind yourself that this kind of stuff does happen. It's terrible. And you nailed it, Joey, with the unpredictability of it, of life, of losing people, of losing friends. And there's no way to wrap your head around it. It doesn't leave you just immensely sad. And I think that's what today's all about. It's all about honoring Wake and being okay with the fact that we feel awful and that this is deeply saddening. And that's okay. It's going to suck for a long time. This isn't just a this week thing, next week thing, next month thing. This is a forever thing. Wake is no longer a part of our active Red Sox Nation, Red Sox lives. And that hurts so very much. And there's no way to sugarcoat it. It's one of the saddest days in the history of Red Sox fans. There's no other way around it. It's brutal.
Yeah. The shock does take a bit to set in for different folks. It's different ways to take it in for different folks. Like, I remember, I'm gonna share a personal anecdote right now.
Yeah.
Okay, because this is what we're doing. We're opening up here. Because if you're listening to this episode, you're not just a casual whatever.
No.
You either one,
you're
care
one
enough
of us.
about. Yeah, you're one of us. You're 162, whatever. And I lost my uncle about 10 years ago, right around there. Yeah, and it was super sudden, right? It was just like, he wasn't sick. It was like an accident, right? And funerals are too quick. I'll say that. They're not in length. I mean, like, somebody dies and then like 2 days later you're putting them in the ground, which, like, I understand, but it would make sense, from a scientific standpoint. Like, you can't, where are you supposed to put them? But it's too fast.
It's always felt a little, it's felt fast. Yeah,
it's quick. And I remember at this is a humble brag, my uncle was good friends with the Dropkick Murphys. So, like,
I knew you were gonna say that.
I know it's a huge brag, right? And really ups my status. They were at the funeral, and a couple of my cousins were like taking selfies with the Dropkick Murphys. And I remember being like real pissed off about that. Being like, do you understand where we are? And I was so mad about it. And took me a long time to realize, like, people process things all sorts of differently. Yeah. So if you're one of those folks who's like, maybe seeing all the sad going around and it's like, oh, I don't I don't feel it's something wrong with me that I don't feel that way. It's totally different for everybody else. And if you're still in that stunned, like, can't believe it kind of phase, it's beyond common. It is beyond common. And everybody takes it in differently. And I think it's just talking it through. Look at us, just talking through our emotions. Modern men of the future. Now, being that we're modern, emotional men of the future, I have some baseball statistics for you. Can I read just a couple of Wake accolades real quick?
Only Joe would have a transition like that. I love that.
We're modern feeling men. Now, do you also know that Tim Wakefield's 17 seasons with the Boston Red Sox is the most in team history for a pitcher, trailing only Carl Yastrzemski, Dwight Evans, and Ted Williams for more among all players. He also has the team record in starts with 430 and in innings with 3,006. He's second in appearances with 590 and strikeouts with 2,590. And his 186 victories trail only Roger Clemens and a one Mr. Cy Young.
Impressive. Very impressive, Joe. The 2009 All-Star Game is something I'll never forget for two reasons. Or maybe just one reason, actually. I might be meshing All-Star games. But when Wakefield got selected to be an All-Star, it genuinely felt like your buddy from down the street was going to play in the MLB All-Star.
Hell yeah. Y'all are going to see my boy Tim.
Y'all are going to see my buddy Timmy. He's going to be in the All-Star game.
I vividly remember my dad just like shaking his head being like, Tim Wakefield, the All-Star. Just like, yeah, that's my boy.
I remember being so excited about that. And then also realizing as the game's going on, wait, is he even going to pitch? Because no one can catch a knuckleball. And sure enough, he didn't pitch because no one can catch a knuckleball. And being so angry. I think I was like, what, at that point, it would have been like 18 or something. Just thinking, you give my buddy Timmy a chance. He's a good kid. Like, give him a chance. I know he's a little different. He's not like all you guys, but he's still good. Okay. Like, it was like personal that Wakefield didn't get into the game. And we all felt like,
Tim.
Buddy. Come back to us, Tim. We'll use you correctly. We'll give you starts. You can start every 5 days. How about that? How does that sound? It's like we got to give him like an ice cream or something.
Yeah. We'll get Doug to catch for you. You'll have a
we'll get Dougie to catch. We'll bring Dougie in here. It's okay. I felt so bad for him, and he understood it. That's the kind of thing, though, that sums up Wakefield personally. He didn't make any kind of fuss about it. I think he was the only guy that made the All-Star team in 2009 that didn't play in the game. And he didn't make a peep about it.
It makes a ton of sense. It's a weird thing to even do. Like, it's probably the moment he showed up that he was told, like, hey, you can't pitch.
It makes sense, but it's also like, why the hell select him if you can't even play in the game? I don't know. But I just remember we all kind of felt this like personal anger towards it because it's like, no, this is our guy. This guy represents us. You guys don't have this knuckleball guy. We have him, but don't treat him any differently than anybody else that's out there. And with Wakefield, that's what it always was. It was always like, he's our guy. Like, we, as much as he embraced Boston, we embraced him. So there was
not a pirate for a moment. That never happened.
No. Anytime I see him in a Pirates jersey, I'm like, that's a Photoshop. That's not a real.
Yeah,
that's
somebody else.
You just doing some weird joke where you just like make up.
And you know what's funny is like that mid to early 90s footage does look like it's from 1971. There was like some kind of big crossover that in like 95. It was like when I was born. They were like, oh, this is how you make an HD camera. So like those images actually do look like from a lifetime ago. They look like Timmy's dad.
Wake is a great example of a player, or just like in terms of the timing that he was playing, that show you the how much technology grew up. How much technology,
like when they show like Tom Brady's first video game and his last video game.
Yeah. Wakefield's one of those guys. What was his first
93.
year pitching? 92. He got in games 92. In 92.
Okay.
1992 to 2011. I mean, I was ages 2 to what? 21. Like that's absurd. This guy, he played forever, and he played through all sorts of eras, not just of life, but of the game. He had cameras of highlights of analytics in baseball. He kind of
How
went
about the
through that.
quality and style of batters he faced? Think about that.
I know. I
Like, you talk
know.
about eras, people talk about, well, you take anybody from one decade to another, it doesn't totally translate. Played in 3 very different decades.
I know. And different eras of baseball, right through the steroid era, right in the
Mhm,
core of it. He went right through that storm, and his
mhm.
numbers didn't really change that much. He was kind of always like a mid fours guy, mid fours ERA. Had a couple outlier seasons. In '02, he had a 2.81 ERA for the Sox. That was pretty easily his best ERA in Boston. But again, it wasn't necessarily about the stats with Wake. It was I was going to say secret weapon, the obvious weapon. It was the knuckleball. It was the fact that if he was on, if that
Yeah,
thing was
almost the only
dancing,
weapon.
yeah, I know it was literally it. But if that
Yeah.
thing was dancing, you just weren't going to hit it, Joe. That was the best part. It was like, all right, and you knew early too. You knew early. It's like, all right, if Wake's knuck is dancing tonight, you're just not going to hit it. Like it's
There
just
were
like cut
certain
and dry.
it was totally a night to night thing. Like, there were he would it's the same thing. Like, he's repeating the same motion over and over again, but there are certain nights. I don't know. There's some
I think
science that we don't
the
know.
wind, the air had something to
Yeah,
do with it. Maybe the moisture on his knuckles. I don't know. There's all sorts of
the
stuff. I love
barometric
that too.
pressure, but like when
Yeah,
one yeah.
the whole thing. When we would talk to him about just the idea and the concept of the knuckleball and like what makes a good knuckleball, because not all knucks are created equal, of course.
Mhm.
And he would go into like the little things of like how he would cut his nails and like at how soon this amount of time from when my start is when I trim my nails. Like that was part of like the knuckle. I'm like, this stuff is so fascinating to me because you're not going to hear that from some guy that throws 100. You're not going to hear that from some guy that just has this God gifted talent that was meant to be some great pitcher. But with Wake, it was like, no, I have to, perfect this craft for me to exist in this league, especially at this level. And he cared so much about being the best possible pitcher, the best possible teammate. I can't see that Timlin clip enough. I know it's been going around a lot,
It's
but
great.
it's an
Yeah.
all-timer from '07. Mike Timlin, another guy that I feel terrible for today that was close with Wakefield. And, there's never going to be enough stories that you can hear about how much Wake mattered here and how good of a teammate and friend he was to people. I'm
Mhm.
excited for that part of this, but it's obviously it's a depressing day. And one quick story, real quick, Joe.
Sorry,
Wait, no, no, go for it.
just
Go for it. Go for it.
while we're on it, that '07 thing does not get talked about enough, about
No,
what
not at
a
all.
teammate move that is, to
Yeah.
realize, one, I just don't have it right now, and I don't think that I'd be an asset to the team, and also recognizing I don't think that anybody's going to take me off this roster besides myself. I am the veteran of veterans, and if anyone's going to do it, it has to be me, and it's what's best for the team. That's like written into a corny sports movie that I'd be like, no one would ever actually do that.
I know.
Someone did.
And he started that year strong. He had like a mid twos, low threes ERA going into like June.
Mhm.
And then in September, it was around 9. And he realized, even though he's been on the team at that point, I mean, it was
10
what it
years,
would have
12
been
years, 12 years.
95. Yeah, 12 years. He was like the longest veteran that they had in '07. He's like, no, I'm hurting the team. I'm gonna sit this out, give more guys a chance, and they go on to sweep the World Series. I have mentioned this story before. I don't know if I've mentioned it on here, but it's something that I'll never forget. And it's like I feel like it's not like it's unique to Wakefield, but I'm just so thankful that it was Wakefield that was a part of this story. So I worked at Rite Aid when I was a senior in high school, and I would always cover shifts for people, Joe. I wanted to get as much money as I could, We're making pretty little at Rite Aid, so you wanted to try to get as many funds as you could so you
Back
could
in
have
your day,
fun.
too. Yeah. Minimum wage was like what, 18
Minimum
cents an
wage was
hour?
$5. Yeah, $5 a shift. So you work 8 hours, you get a 5 spot. But I was working at Rite Aid in October of '07, and the Red Sox won the World Series. And I remember I was trying to sneak this little TV into work that would get Fox, so like I could watch some of the playoff
Is
games
this
during
like an
that.
antenna TV?
Oh, big time. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Wow,
not
that's
as old.
cool.
Let me tell you though,
Yeah.
it looked cooler than you would think. It was like a
I think I
modern.
had one of those too. It's kind of it looked like one of the early Apple computers, almost like
Yeah, it
yeah.
was, but it wasn't that big. It was like you think antenna, you think like super old. This thing actually came out around then. It was like a newer version of like a portable TV. And so it would get the basic channel, ABC, CBS, Fox, like that was it.
Mhm.
But obviously those playoff games were on Fox. And so I'd try to sneak, watch the games, act like I was facing the shelves. Facing is just when you're pulling the stuff up on the shelves and making the aisles look good when there's nothing else to do. And I remember my manager, would see me doing that, take the TV. I was so pissed. I was already like, I don't know. I was so bummed that I had to work these shifts when that playoff run was going on. So the
Mhm.
Red Sox won the World Series, and I wanted to go to the parade so bad. I so desperately wanted to go to the parade. I had gone to um, the Manny walk off against K Rod, and I had skipped school to go to that game. I ended up getting caught, and I was grounded for whatever, like a month. But the getting
Mhm.
grounded, Joey, was for the
Mhm.
rest of the postseason run. So that had been lifted. So I'm like, oh, we're gonna go to the parade. We're gonna have a fun time. Nobody would work my shift. Nobody would
Uh-huh.
cover the shift, and I'm losing my mind. And so I'm working there. No one's in the store. The day's going by. I'm just like, God. And this is pre-Twitter, so it's not like I'm keeping up. I just know everyone's having fun. That was like a certain kind of depressing when you know your friends or some big events going on and you can't even keep up with it, that you just
Mm.
know you're missing out. And so my
That's like a
grandmother.
FOMO that doesn't even exist anymore because they
Exactly,
having a
exactly.
phone and whatever.
Now
Yeah,
you
yeah.
now you actually be able to catch up. This is not being able to look at any parade clips, get any kind of updates on what's going on. I'm working at Rite Aid, checking out people's cigarettes and everything else at the register. So
This is
my
why you hate cigarettes so much.
this is why
Because this moment
I did
scarred
hate
you.
selling people cigarettes. I was like, don't smoke these. But so no one's in the store. It's starting to get a little dark out. And I'm just so sad, dude. I was like so sad. 'Cause I'd just been grounded. I wasn't able to go to the parades. No one would cover the shift. And Tim Wakefield walks in. And
No shit.
I couldn't believe it. I was just standing at the register and I'm like, no way. He's got the World Series coming right from the duck boats. He's got because he lived in Hingham at Black Rock. And so he's got the hat on backwards, like the cap. I'm like, that's sick. He's wearing sunglasses indoors. I'm like, this guy's the coolest cat of all time. And he knew exactly what he was doing. He went right to get some ice because he was probably having a little after party at the place.
I'd imagine.
And I would
Yeah.
imagine. And
He's not
so
going home and turning on
yeah, no,
I don't know.
he's going right. He's going right home to have a party.
Yeah.
So the only other person in there is my grandmother, and she. This is like it still
Wait,
feels like
wait,
a
wait, wait,
weird.
wait. So is this like your grandmother had come to visit you at work?
Yeah, yeah. To try to
Yeah.
like, she knew the situation and she knew how upset I was, and she was trying to
Oh.
like cheer me up.
Well, first of all, it's
And
very nice.
oh, it's very nice.
Yeah.
Also, she was doing something else that is just classic by Nana. She was trying to find items for a Manny Ramirez Halloween costume. So, and we had like wigs there. So she had this like dreadlocks wig. And she's walking around. She doesn't know that Wake's in there. So I'm like, this is hilarious. The only two people in the store are Tim Wakefield and my grandmother. And he comes up to the register. My hands shaking, dude. I'm nervous as hell. I'm trying to act normal, but I'm like,
Mm.
this is one of my favorite players that's at my
And you're what,
register at Rite Aid.
16?
I'm 17,
17?
17 at that
17.
point. And and so I'm checking, I'm ringing stuff up. And he's like, I gave him the price. He scans his card. And I had to ask him, I was just like, Tim, like, you're one of my favorite players. Like, can you sign this piece of receipt paper? I
Oh
had
my god.
pre-ripped a piece of receipt paper and had a pen ready to go. My hand's like shaking. I'm like handing it over. He's like, of course, dude. Like, no problem. He signs it, hands it over. He's like, have a good one, man. Go Sox. And I'm like, yeah, go Sox. I didn't know what to say. It's like, go Sox. Yeah, man. Like, you're great. And he leaves. Oh, by the way, the part of the story that I totally forgot was my Nana came up behind him when when I'm ringing his stuff up, whacks him
Mhm.
on the back and goes, "I know you." Like,
Oh my god.
completely nails him, like nails his pitching arm. I'm like, Nana, like we need this guy pitching in '08. What are you doing? I know you. And he was super nice to
Yeah, we're
her.
running it back in '08, Nana.
Yeah, he was super nice to her. He's like, "Oh, nice swing," and she's like, "Yeah, I'm being Manny Ramirez for Halloween." I'm like, the weirdest thing of all time. My Nana's telling Wake how he's being manny, she's being man. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, it's moral of the story. Biggest thing of the story is that Wake was the nicest guy ever, and it made my day that I didn't get to go to the parade, but Tim Wakefield came in and signed the receipt paper, and I still have it. This is the receipt paper right here.
Steve.
Right? It's pretty cool, huh?
Steven.
Still got the Wake receipt
What a
paper.
conclusion.
I put it in a card case, and I still have it to this day, and I will keep that forever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude, what an awesome
story.
story.
Yeah.
That is so great. I'll tell you, knowing players on a very proximal basis as I do, those kinds of fans, the people whose hands are shaking and can recognize somebody and know their name means a lot to those fellas. So I'm sure in that moment that Tim walked out being like, I just made that kid's night. Like, I bet he knew what he just did, because at the time, and maybe it's a little different because the Sox are kind of on top of the world at the time, but I think back to last year. This is maybe a silly example, but game 162 at Fenway last year, I remember Tommy Pham is signing autographs for kids, and he would take like their ball or whatever and take their pen and look at them and be like, "What's my name?" Like, you want an autograph so bad, what's my name? Yeah. Being stopped at a Rite Aid and being like, "Mr. Wakefield, could you please sign it?"
Please sign it.
I'm sure that meant a whole hell of a lot to him in that moment too, because that's just, especially given the situation that he had just been in. So
I know.
Wow, that's awesome. And what a funny difference in generation too. That you're a little bit older than the guys on the field, you just feel like, hey, how you doing? I know you. That's great.
And that was right before I started. That I went to college and then got internships and was at EEI and saw Schilling, unfortunately, some of these other guys, that were a huge deal at that point, and Teddy Bruschi coming through, and it's like, oh my God. But then you start getting used to being around these guys.
Right.
I was not at 17. No. Wakes and Rite Aid. Yeah, my hands are shaking. That's just kind of how it goes. Over the years, you get more used to being around these guys. So I brought that up in 2018 when we had him on Section 10, and he remembered. And I was so pumped that he remembered. He's like, "Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, right off of, like," he said, like, whatever the route is. He's like, "Oh yeah, right off of there. Yeah, you were there with I think he mentioned my net. He was like, you were there with your grandmother, right?" I'm like, "This is nuts. How did he remember that?" Like, that's, to me, that was a huge story. But the fact that he remembered it was like, it just shows you how good a person. I'm like, there's no reason you should remember that. That's a huge story for me. It shouldn't matter at all to you. But he's like, "Oh, yeah. You had me sign a receipt paper, right?" I'm like, yeah, that's crazy. I couldn't believe it. I was blown away by it. But yeah, the whole thing was it's honestly, I think, my favorite interaction with a Red Sox player because of the situation, how bummed I was, and how fun that team was. That 07 team was a blast to follow. I still think it's the most underrated Red Sox team in terms of how much we talk about it. So,
Steve, I'm going to cut this if I can't do this. But this week, I heard a little buzz. I heard a little rumor that there's a place online that has all of the old Section 10s archived.
Oh, yes.
If
I still see that, the thing is, I forget on the actual pod. I hope he says it on the podcast, because it's the first thing before we had him on. I was like, by the way, I gotta ask you about the thing. He's like, "Oh yeah, receipt paper, right, with your Nana." I hope he repeats it. When you're like, was that on the show or was it off the show? I hope he repeated it when we actually interviewed him, because I think I brought it up then in the interview as well. And he was like, yeah, that moment happened. He was great on that interview, and the Section 10s are gone, but there's got to be a way to find that, right?
I'm telling you, I saw this week that they're online. So
okay.
If they are there, then you at home are hearing this, and I will put that in the show right here. I'll put in him.
Okay.
I'll drop that in
on
here.
On the actual pod. I know he acknowledges it, and he's like, "Yes, I remember." It's one of those things where I hope it's like actually recorded, because sometimes the best stuff ends up being not recorded. But
well, if it's not there, then people aren't hearing this. So
there you go.
There we go.
That is true.
Otherwise, here it is.
It was the parade in 07. I was a senior in high school working at Rite Aid, trying to get it off to go to the parade. Couldn't get off. I was pissed. Worst day of my life.
You walked in with shades on and a backwards hat, and I was like, holy shit, Wake's here. Like, this just made it so much cooler.
What town was this in?
In Hingham.
Oh, it was in Hingham, yeah.
So you went to get ice. You're probably having a little shindig, I would assume, back at the place. And I had you sign a piece of receipt paper because I just had to prove that
I remember this.
You do?
I do remember this. I was getting ice because I had a bunch of people coming over.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I had you sign it. I was like, I didn't even know what I was doing. I put receipt paper out. You're like, yeah, of course. You sign it. My grandmother was behind you. She was going to be Manny Ramirez for Halloween, so she had a wig, and she hits you on the shoulder, go, I know you. I was like, this is the weirdest story ever. This is like when you wake up, you're like, dude, yeah, Wake was there, and he signed a piece of receipt paper, and then Nana hit him on the back, and she was going to be Manny for Halloween. It was bizarre. But I guess the question out of that is that, what's the weird, have you had like a weird thing that someone wants to get signed? I mean, receipt paper is kind of,
Other
random.
than body parts? No.
The body parts is weird, though.
Parts. But
you guys are basically rock stars.
The whole signing somebody's boob never really happened to me. I've signed arm. No, it's never happened to me. Never. I signed somebody's forearm one time, and I actually signed the kid's forehead. I'm like,
forehead?
He goes, can you sign it right here? I'm like, are you sure? Yeah. Like, ask your mom. Yeah. Like, I'll do it. But
how old is he?
Like 12.
Oh, okay. Has anyone ever gotten like your signature tattooed over?
No, I haven't seen that yet.
All right, we'll do it.
We'll do it right now.
We'll do it right now. So that's the Rite Aid Tim Wakefield story. I will never forget it, and I'm glad that I still have it. I'm glad I still got the receipt paper and the Wake autograph. It's a really good autograph. You had a really good signature. So, that was my Wake story.
Hell of a day, man. Hell of a day.
And when like your head just hurts because you've been like tearing up or just like being emotional. It's like,
I mean, it's why people. I went to there's this place. But I think this is our first little taste of what an off-season pod is a little bit, right? Because we're in the off-season right now for us. How crazy is that? That also just, I mean, that's sprung itself upon us. I went to this place in Manchester called Belmont Hall. It's like half a function hall, half a restaurant, but it's one of those places that looks like it's stuck in 1991. It's pretty cool. It just hasn't changed at all. Terrible seats, terrible chairs, whatever. And when you walk in the door, it's like on the left is like the function hall, and on the right is the restaurant. I was walking in to the restaurant part, and the left was all the function hall was all filling up with people coming from a funeral. And there was I took a peek in right as I was walking in, and there's a bartender, and people are drinking, and I was like, "Do people drink at funerals?" I don't know why it hit me so weird. I was like, "Do people drink at funerals?" And the people I was with were like, obviously, of course you drink at funerals. And I think that's exactly why. I think you just hit on it. Your head hurts a little bit from all the emotions and all the things being stirred up. And you just want to have a drink and chit chat with your buddies and, remember the good times and all that stuff, but also just unwind and take a deep breath. And I hope that this pod, at least a little bit, serves as that drink with your buddies.
Yeah,
at the funeral to say, hey, we made it through the actual ceremony. Now we're over at Belmont Hall, having a drink, telling a couple of fun stories, and remembering the good old days. And what a perfect, exemplary quote from Wake himself that Alex Cora brought up this past week. Or I'm sorry, this past night here, Sunday night, post 162. He said the last time he saw Wake, he was like, "Don't worry about me. Don't worry, I'll be fine. I'll be fine." It just is a perfect shining example of the kind of guy that when he's literally battling a terminal illness. He says, "Do not worry about me. I will be fine. Do not spend a second worrying about me."
Yeah,
just it's not an accident that you get 8 Roberto Clemente nominations. So that's takes one hell of a person, and I'm glad that we all kind of get to celebrate him a little bit. Obviously not the situation in which we would want to celebrate him, but I'm glad that we all get to kind of take a second and just be happy that we got to have him in our lives as long as we did.
Yeah, he's going to be deeply missed. He is deeply missed, and it's going to be an emotional week. This is going to be a very emotional week. I would assume tomorrow. Normally Roachy and some of these other like news guys do a really good job of of in these scenarios. You never want these scenarios, but like of reaching out to Orsillo, of getting like a video, like, you know, that kind of stuff where you really get to hear the stories and all that. I'm looking forward to that, hearing from Orsillo. Obviously, you see the tweets and the post today, but some of these guys that play with him, Poppy, I'm sure we'll have a video. Nesson's probably planning a Wake special, and yeah, I feel for everybody that was close to Tim Wakefield. I'm not going to act like I was super close to Wake. I was just honored that I got to meet him, honored that we got to interview him on Section 10, honored that he even knew who I was. And I think he never looked at himself as being a super big deal, even though he's a Red Sox Hall of Famer. And that's something that I think more people can learn from. Like, regardless of what you've done, regardless of what accomplishments you have, we're all just people. We're all people trying to get by. We're all people trying to, you know, do the best that we can. And Tim Wakefield didn't treat anybody differently. He didn't treat, you know, the best guy on the team differently than some fan like myself that's gotten into doing some media stuff. Like, he was always the same with everybody. And when you saw him at Fenway, he had a presence to him. I mean, he's tall as hell. Wake was like one of the tallest dudes I've ever seen. In terms of what you would expect, I'm like, wow, this guy's taller than I actually thought when you're watching all these games. And that presence is going to be missed. And I think we've said a lot of what we want to say today. There's going to be more to say in the coming days here. No other Sox talk today. We're going to have ITM awards this week, and we'll recap a little more of kind of how the end of the season went, forecasting what's going to go on in this offseason. We're going to have a show a week in the offseason, and, you know, a lot of player guests, a lot of media guests, a lot of giveaways. We'll be doing a lot of stuff to keep you guys excited throughout the offseason, heading into spring training next year for a team that hopes to be a lot better than this year's team. But obviously today, the focus is Tim Wakefield, and, you know, we give all our condolences to his family, his friends, and really just we're all in this sadness together. I mean, there's no easy way to handle this. If it feels like you kind of lost a family member today, you basically did. I mean, this is a guy that, how many times was Wakefield on the TV growing up, and you know, doing the broadcast stuff post career, but he was as much a part of those teams as Ortiz or Manny or any of those guys. He was a core player on the most important Red Sox teams ever. And it's really hard to quantify the value of a guy that everybody liked on a team like that. The guy that's been there, done that has that veteran presence that doesn't show up in your baseball reference. Wake had that, and he had the stats too. He had the 200 wins in the innings and all that stuff too. So he had that to go along with it. But an incredible dude, and gone far, far too soon. Just a terribly sad day for all of us, really.
Yep. He'll be missed for a very long time. There's no doubt about that. This isn't going to be something where, you know, we show up opening day and say, oh yeah, that's right, Wake isn't here. It's going to be a noticeable gap. There's going to be a noticeable absence in Red Sox Nation. So, like you said, all the condolences in the world, all the people affected. And I mean, I don't know what to say that we haven't already said. A valuable piece of our family is gone, but we're all in it together.
Yes, that's the important part. That's the most important part here. Like, it's okay to feel terrible right now. It's we're all kind of going through it, and yeah, Wake was that guy, man. He did it all, and left it all out there, and gave back to everybody. If anything, it should just be a reminder of how important it is to live a life that cares about other people, that gives back, that isn't just about yourself. The outpouring of support for Wakefield today, and remembering what he did in this community, and for people that he loved and people that he didn't even know, you know, like going to the Jimmy Fund, probably going to a million Red Sox events. There's probably a ton of events that they ask these guys to do that players will be like, I can't really do that. Wake was at all this stuff. Wake did everything. And that carries immense value, when unfortunately it sucks when you have to like recap it in this form or discuss it in this form, but still it should show us all the value of being nice to one another. And genuinely caring about other people ahead of yourself.
I think Wake is being remembered the way that all of us would want to be remembered.
Yeah, big time.
He's led a life that is earned a remembrance that we all strive for. So, I mean, nothing but positive things around him. Gonna miss him.
We will be talking with you guys later this week. 23 Red Sox season is over. ITM awards are coming up. I am interested to see what's next here. For the Red Sox, it's tough, obviously, for the organization in terms of how they're going to handle this. Thoughts with everybody within the organization, Sam Kennedy, all these people that were close with him. This is not, you don't wish this on anybody. This is a brutal thing to handle. So, that they're going to do the right thing. The Red Sox are very good at honoring those that matter the most to the team. And that's what's coming up here. So, yep.
One thing I did want to,
unfortunately, I still can't believe it happened, Joe. I'm not going to lie.
I know.
I still.
One thing I did want to ask about before we get out of here, just for clarification's sake for the folks at home, is our off-season schedule.
Yeah,
we are going to be going to one show a week. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Have we decided on what day we're going to be doing that?
Not yet. We'll probably do ITM awards on like Wednesday night, I would assume, and we'll like I mentioned, we'll do some like recap stuff there and kind of. I don't think that's going to be looking ahead to the off season quite yet. That'll probably be the following week, but yeah, it's probably like midweek. You always want to let some news come in before. We've done shows in the past, I feel like, where it's like, oh, it's a little too early in the week, where then the big thing happens like the next day. So yeah, expect that we would put a show out probably every Wednesday night. I think that would be the move. Depending on our schedules, Joey, of course, we'll figure that out. But that should be the plan if we can pull it off.
Yeah.
So
I just wanted to let the people know, but yeah, that sounds good to me. Take the tentative plan.
Yes.
We will definitely be back this Wednesday night though.
We will be
award show.
Back
we will be
week.
handing out
awards
awards for this season.
No break for us, Joe. No break.
God, no.
No breaks.
I don't even want a break. Even with the way this season went, I think last year, had it not been our inaugural season doing a show, that would have been more deserving of a break because things were kind of in a waiting game. News is going to be coming very soon. This is not a time to be sitting and waiting around. So
no,
I think there's
more than this is like a real season starting up here. This offseason is going to feel like way more meaningful than the last couple months. So
absolutely,
we got that going for us. But that'll do it for episode 164. Once again, for the final time for this show, our deepest condolences, thoughts, prayers with the family of Tim Wakefield, his friends, and everybody that mattered to him. We are feeling with you. We are sad with you. We are right there with you in this pain, and we will get through this together. It's going to be tough. This next couple weeks is going to be tough. Next season's going to be tough with him not there in the booth and at Fenway. But he lived a great life, and if anything, we're going to get some very good stories this week. We're going to honor him the way he should be honored. So, for Joey Capone, I'm Steve Perrault. Rest in peace, Tim Wakefield.